You are listening to the Push Media Podcast Network.
This is good shit.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our forefathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, dedicated to the proposition that all men are created stupid. Haha, gotcha, caught you. Now, raise your hand if you know what speech that's from, and the answer is no, it's not Martin Luther King. The answer is it's the guy who might have had Marfan syndrome, was a Rosicrucian, and had a bedfellow who wasn't a woman, even by 1860 standards, addressing a little sleepy town in the middle of Pennsylvania, following one of the bloodiest, in fact, historically, dare I say, and I only say it because, and yes, it was, see, then, hence confirmed, following the bloodiest battle from the Civil War. Of course, that being Gettysburg. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, is a town, a local economy that has made its bones, and in this sense, all literally based off of the most bloody battle on U.S. soil. It is a town where if you are even from, let's say, a 4-hour drive available to Gettysburg, you will be taken there. At some point during your elementary school education, you will be taken there because it's a requirement, because you need to go see and feel the blood-soaked open field in the middle of rural central Pennsylvania and appreciate the importance of what happened here. Keep in mind, I was like 11, 12, I think the first time I did that. I would argue that might be a little too early to have, children attempt to appreciate the significance of Americans fighting literally their brothers in what was the most blood-soaked battle, and we are now standing on those haunted grounds. That's something I don't think really needs to be hammered home into the heads of 12-year-olds. We would much rather go to the gift shop and see how a fake musket works, but that's what happens. Now, I start off with quoting President Abraham Lincoln and referencing Gettysburg, not because the town of Gettysburg has become our first official sponsor. Take that, Punxsutawney, go fuck yourself, Phil. I start with that because, listen, I have hunches. I have evidence most of the time. I have numbers I can point to. I have statistics. I usually do my best to present what is objective. However, just as much, I would say, I trust my hunches because I be having hunches. I be having a motherfucking gut. And my gut tells me, based off of, just my hunch and the fact that there's 2 at least open ongoing investigations involving a former U.S. president. There has been claims he has stolen classified documents. Saudi Arabia has popped its head again just to say, hello, we're still fucking with everybody. So is that my hunch? Or is that me just, being able to read and follow the news at a level of comprehension slightly above Rosemary Kennedy? So, I don't know, but I have some evidence. I'll present that later, but I just want to start off with my gut. I want to start off with my hunch, because above anything and everything, the primary and foremost message of this show is that I am discussing things that are real. What I am saying about them, merely a suggestion. Take them as you may at your own risk and hazard. But this episode, one of my hunches is telling me, it's kind of making me think, it's kind of making me feel like that there might be a civil war. And I know that sounds like you're being a calamitist, like you're being an alarmist, like you're being a sensationalist, like you're being any other type of ist. But the thing is, ain't nobody give a fuck about what type of ist you are. Nobody cares about your ideology. Because really, all that's really necessary, the only types of signs that are required for you to see any and all indications of a future civil war have nothing to do with ideology. You can point to the ideologies you think are the problem, but the real signs that indicate now there's going to be a fight, a physical fight. There might be a fight that requires years from now, buses of school children to come and hear about horrific, awful evils of war way too early and then get some candy at a gift shop and stop at an old country buffet on the way back to civilization because the middle of Pennsylvania is a godforsaken wasteland. But the point of that little tangent before I got there, your ideologies, whatever ists you fall under, whatever isms you subscribe to, don't mean shit, because you can point in history to instances where horrific things would go on to happen, like, say, a world war, any other type of war, a skirmish, anything that involved military action, fucking the American Revolution, Lexington and Concord. We don't even know who fired the first shot. We just had two armies looking at each other, and someone flinched. And now there's a country. Isn't that kind of a fucking stupid way to have a country? If you think about it, isn't that kind of miraculously, randomly dumb? We have a country because we beat Britain. Well, depending on who you ask, maybe we're not even separated from Britain and it's still the same country and there's really about 7 tribes or kingdoms on the earth. And, there's some people who think that. I'm not one of them. I'm just trying to represent everybody because that's what I care about. Representation matters. But apart from the ideas of political ideologies, all of the time spent in classrooms learning about the political spectrum and what, points of view disagree with other points of view. And then if you apply that to history and you look at other countries that went through civil war, which is, a lot of Latin America. There was a Spanish Civil War. We had a civil war, a pretty fucking good one because we're Americans. And if anyone's going to have a war, a civil war, you better believe we are going to kill the most of us. It was probably, unfortunately, our most Russian moment in history. Russians are, who cares? I hate them. That's fine. And I've decided that I am comfortable just publicly being racist towards Russians. So feel free to label me a racist as long as you include that very important asterisk that it's only against Russian people. So there you go. There I have it. There is my bold public stance. Feel free to call me that. And I am also, and this is very important, this is, dare I say, an instructive moment. I will happily recant all of my newfound proud public racism towards Russians as soon as they stop putting people on trains. So there are my stipulations. There you have it, public. Who's right in this situation? But back to my larger point. Looking at history, the American Revolution, we don't even know who fired the first shot. Looking at any other country's civil war, most major events, most just general wars, all kind of, you can point to these ideologies, these different sides of the spectrum that you've learned about in a class you didn't pay attention to, and that these sides hate those sides. But what really happens is, sure, those teams are already established, but that just comes in handy later for the fight. What really causes the war, what triggers something, what erupts, what tips it over the goddamn seesaw into eternal chaos until someone says, what the fuck, is something stupid, is something dumb, is something seemingly innocuous that actually changes the course of history for the rest of time. For example, Donald Trump is a pretty dummy. Could I have thought of a better adjective there? Sure. Could I have made that an expletive-laced diatribe where I pander and just try to sound like a cool hip fella? Heck no. Holy cow. But what I'm saying is I don't like him. Now, I've spent most of the time that he's had a political career defending him, to be quite frank with you. And I know these are not points that will make me popular up top, like saying, go ahead, call me racist, and I love Trump. But of course, like many other things that at first seem kind of crazy, there is nuance. I was defending Trump because I hated the people attacking Trump. And I could tell most people, and that's not to say all of them, I'm sure Noam Chomsky had very, very tactful attacks of Trump that I probably would have agreed with. But I wasn't coming across a lot of Noam Chomskys because I deal with people who do things in the real world and leave their fucking office in MIT. Stop deferring to Noam. I have a weird thing with him. But I defended him because people talking about him just kind of pissed me off. They felt very emotionally baseless, like, attacks that weren't anything. Like, they would say, well, he's a Nazi. And I'm like, well, he's not. You know what a big difference was? He didn't put anybody on a fucking train. You know what I mean? You can't just throw around words like that because it devalued them. So I found myself, in many instances, just taking the contrarian point of view, And there were a few examples you could point to of Trump doing good things, like getting people out of jail for, marijuana possession, like grandmoms who were in there for 40 years and shit like that. Now, while many of you haters, obviously, and a lot of my close and dear friends and family members would say I'm just trolling, I'm just being a contrarian, I just like to stir the pot, all of that true. But in most of my criticisms or defenses of Trump, I would say what actually was going on there was I actually believe in, like, the process of things. I truly, and I know this is something that has completely become unpopular, I don't give a shit about any of these politicians, honestly, any person who works and represents a part of a larger thing, of a function of society that is supposed to serve us. In most cases, that's the form of government. I don't give a shit about politicians as people. I don't give a fuck. I could care less. Joe Biden, don't care. Barack Obama, hell of a jumper. Wet ass Jimmy. Don't give a shit. Bombed a bunch of packy weddings too. I don't care about him personally. It's a matter of how efficient he was and how therefore efficient the government was. I don't care about the cult of personality because I am currently trying to build one of my own. I don't get lost or swept up in thinking these are like superheroes or people or that represent a team that I need to get behind. That's the first mistake right out of the gate. So when people would hate on Trump, I would hear a lot of times, you just don't like this thing that he has falsely come to represent in your mind. Now, there are certainly a plethora of legitimate things you could point to critique him, and I plan on doing so for the remainder of this episode. But when this was happening, this hypothetical conversation that I would have with somebody earlier, you weren't using any of them. You know what I mean? So when me would then say, hey, I'm not a build-the-wall, hard-right Republican Fox News guy. I'm really not. I know I may sound like it, and I know I may act like it. I know I make jokes about it, and I know I may actually be. Who said that? Point is, when I would point to anything Trump did that was good, like, getting people out of prison who weren't supposed to be there, that wasn't me trolling. That was me believing in the process should work correctly. I didn't give a fuck who did the right thing in that case. I'm just glad the grandmom got out of jail for having a joint and glaucoma while she still could. I don't give a fuck who did it. I'm just glad it happened. Do you understand what I mean? I can separate the art from the artist within the context of politician, as crazy and borderline not useful that sentence was at all to this point. Point is, you can't get behind the idea of a person because it is very dangerous when those two types of love or understanding or subservience, dare I say, to a person like that, when those two worlds blend together, when you have a politician or you have someone who has access to politicians or the government or, used to be the president and is planning on running again, you can't have this also bubbling issue of this cult of personality coming to actualization where you have at any point really in any city for the most part a on guard, ready at your beck and call, Minuteman style militia ready to show up and dox and hang the children of judges. Because that is what happens when people misguidedly become a supporter of a person, become a fervent apostle of a person, an acolyte. I don't know if I used any of those words correctly. You become a devout follower of a cult leader. You separate the idea that, and I don't know why people forget this, it is a very powerful thought. The government works for you, which is another reason why you should not become fans of individual people within the government. Their names could be Bill and Bob. It could be Agnes, Agatha, Jermaine, and Jack make up the cabinet. I don't give a fuck because the point is, what's the cabinet doing? You know what I mean? Now the fact that there's people in this country who, for a slew of reasons, maybe they're isolated, maybe they don't have jobs, maybe they're not married, maybe they lack the social skills and they don't take showers. Point is, there's a group of people who have a legal right, unfortunately, but I still support it, to buy guns. And they have access to the internet. And on the internet, they have made accounts on things like Truth Social, which I thought was a joke up until so recently. I thought anytime people referenced Truth Social and like, hey, Donald Trump truthed something, I thought that was maybe like an ongoing Onion article thing. I didn't think he actually went out of his way to make a stupid, dumb gay Twitter for stupid, dumb idiots. But it turns out he did. Point of all of that is there are now people who have become such fans of the person Donald Trump, not the politician, just the actual person. They've become devout followers. They have blended their ideas of listening to the government and what a government is supposed to do for them and a devout follower of a personality. That is very dangerous. And that, historically, because history is so being repeated, every instance of a government taking over a country and doing horrific shit that is later taught to kids in classrooms too early who aren't paying attention, that is the reason it happened. There was somebody who charismatically managed to escape exit velocity, the orbit of what is accepted for a politician to do, what is accepted influence for a politician. They have leapfrogged out of that and become demigod-like. They have become a cult of personality. And once that happens, people do the same. And what they're willing to do extends beyond what they're willing to do for the government. It extends beyond what they're willing to do for anything. It becomes something they're willing to die for, or in this case, more importantly, kill others for. If you're struggling to understand the point I'm trying to make, and you used to be a classmate of Rosemary Kennedy's, some examples of this throughout history include Genghis Khan, the Teutonic tribes of pre-Germany, Roman emperors, Stalin, Hitler, Pinochet, Saddam Hussein, and pretty much anyone who was in charge of the Ottoman Empire while it was here. You know what I mean? Castro. There are so many instances of this one person becoming so good at politics that they understand, they crack the code, they realize, the key to really winning this shit is I need to become something above politics. And then politics simply acts as the framework for me to enforce whatever my silly whim is. If you don't, again, understand what I'm saying, think of any cult ever. There's never been a cult that was a good idea, and there's never been a cult whose primary goal was anything other, unless it, of course, was, already kind of established and later purchased or bought out, we'll say, by the Rockefeller family as a way to just launder money in the importation of things from other countries. But the point is, any cult that was ever started, really, if you get to the heart of it, the point of it is it's just some guy who wants to bang your wife. You know what I mean? That is the core of it. And it's the same root of any oppressive government throughout history that did awful fucked up shit. There's plenty of things to point to where you could say this party and that party and use a bunch of isms and use a bunch of ists. But really, the root of it is there was one guy who realized, the way to really crack this shit is they need to see me as something above a politician. They need to see me as their father, as this person they aspire to be. The way to do that, the steps that you need to take in order to lay the framework for you to take over that role, that headspace in people's mind, their hearts, their soul, you need to at first not institute, I guess, but you need to sort of like clandestinely roll out this idea that everything isn't to be trusted, this idea that all of the institutions, whether you like them or you hate them, and you should hate them. There's good reason to hate them, but you should only hate them because you know why you should hate them. You should only hate the FBI because you know they killed Martin Luther King, allegedly. You should only hate the FBI because you know they... All right, but we'll stop because there's plenty of other examples and plenty of other groups in Florida that, they were helping traffic children. The point is, you should only hate these things, these institutions, with evidence that you found. You should not suddenly distrust something that for the most part has been working, and there's plenty of things in America that you could point to that don't do great stuff, but these institutions by and large are functional because you know why? They're still here. You shouldn't just randomly distrust something because someone told you to. Think about what that means, first of all. If you do that leap in your head, that's basically you telling yourself evidence is no longer required to think anything. Think about how dangerous that is. Every great's not the right word. Every historic evil regime that has taken over was led by a person who at some point, through craftily working his way into existing politics, became a godlike person. And the way to have the followers that a godlike person requires is to have all of the people begin to think they shouldn't trust things. That distrust spreads, and it spreads all the way up the ladder, all the way up, the local state politics, all the way up to the point where you have states considering maybe we leave the country. I don't know if I really trust it. And if you were to just look at what's going on recently, there's literally a bill just sitting around in Texas about them claiming we want to secede. There's been several attempts of California making 3 new states. All of this distrust happens. I don't know anyone who would trust anyone across the aisle currently elected. And then there's civil war. So, and I know it sounds like the end of the episode, but we're just getting started, bitch. Let's talk about Trump. So let me recount. Let me recount. I'm definitely not going to recant. Let me recount what has happened with the FBI and Donald Trump and why I gave you a phenomenal preamble, I think, for the reason why there will be a civil war. I don't want to be a calamitist. I'm just paying attention. Donald Trump lost the election, and he couldn't handle it. He couldn't handle it because he decided to seed the sows of doubt within people's minds that maybe our election system is entirely illegitimate. Maybe this election was stolen from me. Maybe mail-in ballots are a way for the Democrats to steal elections. Now, maybe that's true, but what you can't do, and I've made this point, you just gotta fucking be a grown-up, and you gotta eat that hard fact. You cannot make people think, especially as the motherfucking president, that elections are not honest, that they don't have integrity. That's one of the only things separating us from being a banana republic. But that's what he did. And it was the first indicator that he's actually the guy so dumb. He's just the unique, perfect type of stupid that will actually be the thing that starts a civil war. Because there was examples, very recent examples of, take Al Gore. He won the popular vote, and then he lost, Florida, the recount, hanging Chad. Point is, Al Gore had plenty of reason. He had plenty of justified reason to say, I have a hunch that something fishy's going on here. But he didn't. And do you know what Al Gore said? Do you know what the narcoleptic plantation owner who invented the internet and flies around in a jet proselytizing about global warming said? Al Gore said, the importance of the election and the integrity of it can't be compromised. And I'm not directly quoting, and I'm sure what I said was actually a better collection of words than the ones he used. But that's impressive because it's true. That should have been our first sign Trump was up to some shit. So, he loses the election, and we'll just gloss over a few things you already know about, a few minor details, like, there was already an insurrection going on with an ongoing investigation and a committee investigating his role in instigating it. That happened, but while he was leaving the White House, he took some shit. And he took some shit because he was sad. He took some boxes because he thought they were his. I'm not president anymore. I'm going to take this fucking box. That's what I thought. And, I got that one wrong, unfortunately. That was kind of fucked. Turns out he didn't just take a box and storm off like a toddler. Turns out he took 11 boxes of highly classified documents potentially containing nuclear launch codes, and there's been a suspicious $2 billion investment from Saudi Arabia to his Jewish stepson, Jared Kushner, recently. You tell me what you think might have happened. And you tell me all right, I've made this point before, but why does it seem like literally anything fucked that has happened and seems so not completely truthful involves Saudi Arabia? I mean, 11 of the 19 hijackers who committed 9/11 were from Saudi Arabia, so we decide we have to invade Afghanistan. That's one of the biggest questions I still have. Now I have this question, why does it seem like a box of stuff that the president took, even though he claims he didn't take anything, has information that definitely would be willing to be purchased by someone like Saudi Arabia, and then Saudi Arabia pays Jewish Jared Kushner, his Jewish, and I'm not trying to be anti-Semitic, I'm not trying to be pro-Farrakhan, I'm telling you, for you unread, uncultured swine, the people of Saudi Arabia, especially the people who wear the nicest robes, who are the kings and queens, they think Jewish people should be exterminated. So, that deeply held belief, they were able to overcome and provide $2 billion to someone they think is less than a person. Someone they would have gleefully put on a train. Why would they have done that? But that's speculation. Let's not get into that quite yet. So, Trump leaves office, and the whole time he's, bitching and moaning and says it was stolen from him. Meanwhile, all of the people who, for a bunch of reasons, kind of have been isolated or just kind of left out of society in some way or another, and they feel victimized. And a lot of these people are white guys. Now, I'm not going to bring race into it, but I just did. Assalamu alaikum. But these white guys who feel isolated and are looking for something to believe in already voted for Trump, are already falling under the political spectrum that probably is best represented by Trump. And they have guns. And they probably don't have jobs, so they are able to get on a Greyhound and go up to any of the Carolinas that you need them to whenever. They are able to have a tiki torch whenever you need them to. In fact, they have extras. Now, all of the people, like these people, are listening to Trump bitch and moan, watching him truth about the fact he should still be president, and they're just sitting in their basement seething. They're getting real fucking mad. And the ones who, couldn't afford the bus ticket to get to January 6th, they're like, oh boy, just fucking, I got a savings account now, Trump, you just tell me where to go and I'm fucking ready. I'm not gonna miss it this time. Those guys have been doing that. So Trump, truthing about, I was robbed, I was a victim, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, on top of the ongoing January 6th investigation, we suddenly have, just out of the blue, the FBI executing a search warrant on Mar-a-Lago because of suspected beliefs that Donald Trump has taken classified documents, boxes of them, illegally down to the golf course. Just when you think shit couldn't get weirder, you're like, no, it's all weird. So, Trump immediately, his first, reaction to the accusations of this. Now, keep in mind, this isn't like the FBI tweeted at him or truthed at him or subtweeted him and said, hey, we think you took something that belongs to us. These were the fucking FBI agents executing a raid, son. They showed up ready to do it. And you know what happened? Let me just explain a very key, important detail that happened during the raid. FBI agents walked into Mar-a-Lago carrying 0 boxes. FBI agents walked out of Mar-a-Lago carrying 11 boxes. Keep that very important detail in mind. I promise you it's not some red herring or clue that'll come in handy at the end of the mystery. It's just literally what the fuck happened. FBI goes in, no boxes. FBI comes out, 11 boxes. Keep that in mind. So Trump, his first response to the FBI raid was, I don't have anything. That was his first attempt at wiggling out of this. He's like, you think you guys got me? You think the FBI has me pinned? Guys, watch this. What boxes? Just as a quick aside, if you are willing to become a militiaman and potentially give your life for a cult leader whose first response to the FBI's raid on his property and seizure of 11 boxes is, what boxes? Literally just leave. Just get out. Okay, so that's what happened. And then Trump was like, all right, maybe there were some boxes, but they were all, protected under attorney-client privilege. I'm allowed to have those boxes. They're my boxes. All right, so first of all, you didn't have boxes, but the boxes the FBI did find, which of course you said you didn't have, if you were to have them, which of course you did, even though you said you didn't, they were protected under attorney-client privilege. The boxes I didn't have that were there, of course, that is. What? But then it gets even better. Because included in the FBI's seizure of these 11 boxes were truly and legitimately the highest classified level documents. They were top secret. Now, we don't know what's on those documents. Obviously, that's the point of top secret. But they were that. They were the highest level of classified a document could be. Now, I direct you again to this is just my theory and potential conjecture. Seems weird Jared Kushner, the Jewish person who should be hated by the entire Saudi Arabian regime, who mysteriously is always involved in America's misfortunes financially, has just provided a $2 billion investment to him after Trump left office. I wonder what information they might have purchased. So that's a big concern. Now, this is also interesting because 2 of Trump's lawyers, his oldest lawyers that have been like on his side forever. I'm talking like since the Home Alone days. One of them signed a statement saying all materials have been returned. So that's interesting too, because that means we have a lawyer who either knowingly lied and now has to be disbarred, tarred, and feathered, baby, or we have Trump lying to his lawyers, who's now then taking what he thinks is the truth and disseminating that, which is also a pretty big fucking deal. That's pretty bad. But if that's just, morally bad and that's not enough for you to be like, well, people do bad shit. You know what else happened? And this is according to one of these lawyers. During the FBI raid of Mar-a-Lago, they accidentally seized 3 passports belonging to Donald Trump. They were very upset about that, and they returned them promptly. But did you catch what I just said there? 3 passports, not 1, not 2, not 3. 3 passports. And, you are only one person. Regardless of how far along your schizophrenia is, you only get 1 passport. You know what I mean? So, and for further explanation on this mysterious number of passports, the explanation from his lawyer was as follows. One's expired, one's his, and the other one's in a different name. 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 Okay? First of all, isn't that a federal crime right out of the gate? And let's just say maybe it's not a fake passport. Maybe it's not some, bought off the Silk Road passport so Trump could get into underage bars. And by get into underage bars, I mean, I guess just get into underage bars. I don't want to be salacious. I'm not a yellow journalist. I have been tested for coronavirus. If you get it, you get it. Fuck it, we continue. Point is, let's just say it's not a completely fake, underage drinking passport. Let's say it's one of those legitimate fake passports. Let's say it's one of those Washington State passports. Let's say it's one of those NORAD passports. Let's say that, hypothetically, for the sake of argument. Never mind, I can't even, for the sake of argument, accept that belief. Because do you think for a second Donald Trump was deemed someone capable, mentally fit enough to get one of those legitimate fake passports? I sure don't. I would think anyone who is even kind of in charge of that decision, does this guy get one of the real fake passports? I don't think any of those people would trust him. In fact, I would think most of those people hate him. Because Trump would listen to nobody. He would just go off of his whims because he's a cult leader and that's what they do. So there were 3 passports found, which is already very suspicious in the raid. And then, because he's just truthing the whole time about how his feelings were hurt and everything that was going wrong and everything that was just a great injustice and how the FBI was once again, conducting a witch hunt. It was a politically motivated witch hunt against him and his family. And then he, in retaliation to that, he's spouting all this shit. He's saying the FBI's doing this, they're doing that, they're bad guys. And sure, maybe some of them are. But to the point previously made, it is dangerous when you tell people not to trust authority. And it's a tricky thing because you shouldn't trust authority, but you shouldn't trust it for you. You shouldn't trust it because someone's telling you not to, because another way for someone to tell you, hey, don't trust this authority, the other way for them to say what they actually mean is to say, hey, we want you to trust my authority. Do you understand? So Trump is truthing away all day about how he was butthurt about the FBI raid. Meanwhile, all of those disenfranchised, heavily armed, short-dicked dudes waiting in a basement ready for, round 2 so they could get theirs, basically, because they missed the first round with January 6th. They're reading all of these truths. They are reading all of the shit Trump is complaining about like he was a teenage girl on, what was that, Tumblr. Yes. That's actually more apt an analogy than I was even expecting because he literally created his own gay social media to rant about how the world's against him. He's truly a bitch on Tumblr. But most bitches on Tumblr don't have a militia ready to kill. Trump does, and Trump knows it. But what Trump's doing is this really, in my opinion, the first kind of almost impressively tactful thing where he's gaslighting people in a way where he is playing both sides. On one hand, he is publicly to mainstream outlets saying, I am doing everything I can to cooperate with the FBI. The temperature in this country is far too hot. I want to bring it down. I don't want anything to boil over. I don't want there to be civil unrest. But there were a lot of good people on both sides. Stand down, stay ready, stay frosty. I'm on your 6. And then on the other hand, so Trump's going in like mainstream outlets saying, listen, I just want what's best. But then at the same goddamn time, probably while being interviewed, he's on his own made-up social media platform. He's basically like a bitch on Tumblr saying like, oh my God, guys, like, I'm so like hurt that like the FBI like took like my boxes and I had a bunch of like totally like important stuff in there. Things that I was going to sell to like Saudi Arabia and shit. And I'm so sad. Do you guys think you could come and bring like a bunch of guns and maybe like kill the children of doxed judges or something, and then all the dudes who are just like waiting in Florida or wherever the fucking basement is that they are sitting in are standing by, disenfranchised, with a newfound religious fervor for the bulbous orange cartoon man. Now, do you see where this is going? Do you see how this doesn't end well? Do you see how one guy who's disenfranchised doesn't have anything to believe in, but he does have a gun, and then John Lennon's dead? You know what I mean? This doesn't end really well anytime. Now, imagine it on the scale that it already is. And if you think I'm being too calamitous, allow me to hip you to this information. There was a man in Cincinnati who tried to bomb the FBI office, okay? Now, causation, correlation, you have to be very careful linking things. However, I am one to not believe in coincidence literally at all. Now, you could say maybe the guy tried to bomb the Cincinnati FBI office because he had a personal problem with the Cincinnati FBI office that was completely unrelated to what's going on with the FBI at large and Donald Trump, sure. You could think that, or you could, continue going to class and riding a bus with Rosemary Kennedy. Because that is clearly a guy who probably has a Truth Social, who probably follows the dumb bitch on Tumblr who said, bring your gun, we got children of judges to kill, and he brought a dirty bomb to an FBI office in Cincinnati. Thank goodness he picked Cincinnati, a city as irrelevant as that. Fuck the Queen City. How about you start a baseball season on the road for once, you pussy? That's a very specific deep cut. But anyway, do you see what's going on? That's a bomb threat. Do you want to live in a world where there is an orange man who is motivated by nothing other than, at this point, whatever happens in his head, and then someone with a bomb shows up? I mean, the government spent, 30, 40 years researching how to make people who can, at the drop of a dime, just be willing to plant a bomb somewhere and walk off, escape to Witch Mountain or some shit after the bomb's detonated? Do you really want, and you know what's a funny thought? Do you know how frustrating it must be to the researchers, to the doctors in charge of MKUltra, to all of the people that conducted the LSD experiments, to all of the people that tried to create the perfect Manchurian candidate? Do you know how fucking pissed off they must be right now that Trump can just fucking make a tweet, an equivalent on a bullshit WordPress website, I assume, and then he can have someone willing to show up wherever, whenever, at any time. He doesn't even have to pay them more on weekends, and they'll plant the bomb. The MKUltra dudes must be like, are you fucking kidding me? Why did we just spend 40 years abducting children and conversing with evil aliens? Well, why stop now? You know what I mean? But so, apart from that, Trump has literally demonstrated he now has, and this is only the very beginning of whatever ultimately ends up happening from this, he has the ability to tweet something and a bomb shows up at an FBI office. Now, once again, let's look back at history. How do you think the Civil War started? Well, there was tension. There were ultimately people who disagreed with people about things. And, let's not forget there were some people that owned other people. You shouldn't be able to do that. But there was enough tension, but there needed to be something that boiled it over. Now, there's a bunch of different things that maybe led to the Civil War, Kansas-Nebraska Act, blah, blah, blah. You could point to isms, you could point to ideologies, but you could also point to just seemingly dumb things. You could point to a growing distrust of institutions, and then eventually we have a bifurcated line where two sides start killing each other. They kill each other so much that nothing can grow in the field anymore because it's been soaked with gallons of blood, and children come on field trips to pay homage. The course of action that gets us there looks a hell of a lot like this. It looks a hell of a lot like a guy who used to be president, who somehow seems to have more influence over people, and now has the ability to have them commit acts of violence in the real world against literal institutions that represent America. That is an attack on the country. If the guy represents a collective of people who they themselves identify as a collective, that is a side. Do you understand? What the fuck do you think the Confederacy was? It was a collection of people who identify as one team saying, fuck that side. But they were saying it with a dumber accent, and we're all racist. How different does that sound from right now, if you think about it? How eerie is that point? How different does that sound than right now? There's a guy, let's call him Jefferson Davis, Donald Trump, who has come to earn the support past the amount of support a politician has. I mean, politician, if you really support a politician, I mean like a weird level of support a politician, you put a sign on your front lawn, you maybe give them $100 and then you later have that as a tax write-off for yourself. I mean, what do you really do? But if you believe in someone as a person, as a personality, you're willing to give them all of your possessions, fuck your wife, and potentially die for them if they need you to, and you do. And that happens, and they did, hence Gettysburg. In fact, I know the field where most of them died doing that. Now, how do you think that happened? It wasn't just like the Civil War was like, all right, officially Civil War, we'll meet at Gettysburg, and then it'll all be resolved. There was a lot of time. It was 4 years of fighting. Wars take a while. Wars are a big process. It's supposed to be very difficult to make a war actually boil over and start to happen. And like I said, the thing that ultimately, because there's always tension, water is always at a simmer, you just don't ever want it to boil. Because if you boil water for too long, eventually it evaporates and you have no fucking water left, or a country. You want to simmer, you don't want to boil. But the thing, something as silly and as dumb as forgetting to turn the stove off, or a reality star winning the presidency on a lark and accidentally accumulating enough influence to have people literally willing to detonate bombs at the FBI, are equally as dumb. But the reaction, the consequence, such as a bomb going off at the FBI, and 9/11, explain to me the difference. Obviously the loss of life, but they are both attacks. Domestic attacks, terrorist attacks, politically motivated attacks. This is what Iran would happily do. Saudi Arabia would happily do and blame on Iran. This is what our enemies would happily do. This is an act of war. Do you know what I mean? Now, you could say I'm being alarmist. You could say I'm giving these idiots in basements in Florida way too much credit. Sure. But the thing is, I'm a great guy. I'm really nice. I give you the benefit of the doubt, guy. I think he's a good guy. Like my grandpa, I think most people are good guys. You have a hard time proving me you're not. Unless you're the guy who plants a bomb at the FBI office in Cincinnati. All right, you're probably not a great guy. But I don't think I'm being an alarmist because I'm kind of seeing it in the world. You know what I mean? It's not like it's only on the internet. These people are showing up. There's an armed group of people outside Mar-a-Lago just because they feel inclined, because they feel it's their civic duty. Does that not concern anybody? That feels like some weird, rabies-informed sense of zombie patriotism has affected people whose IQ is negative or went to school with Rosemary Kennedy. There's people with guns who believe in a president who's not president anymore but still thinks he is, willing to attack the FBI office. Think the FBI is lying, thinks the FBI is illegitimate. Which, interestingly enough, wouldn't that not be being like, pro Blue Lives Matter, not supporting the police? I would think, and maybe manners and customs have changed, but it's kind of rude to plant a bomb in your office. That doesn't seem like a very pro-Blue Lives Matter thing. That's just me. But walk it out in your mind. Think this through logically. let's just say, for the sake of argument, let's pretend everything is right as rain and your mom is ready to see me and she got that dress on that I like. Let's pretend everything is peachy keen, Avril Lavigne. If there was to be a civil war, what were the steps that have to happen so one would take place? Well, sides would need to form. Okay, check. The sides, the seceding side, the MAGA side, let's just call it. I mean, we're just having a conversation. This isn't based in anything real. Let's just say the MAGA side. Well, they would need to prove or at least be willing to actually fight. Like, it can't just be people talking online. That's just any group today bitching online. What makes that a potential civil war? There has to be examples of actual willingness to commit acts of violence and acts of war. Check, there was a bomb at the FBI office in Cincinnati. All right, what's next? Well, okay, if a civil war was going to happen, how does the military work currently? So there's a military that America has. We all know this. It's the best military. It's the biggest military. And it should be bigger. Do you understand me? Any money you plan on donating throughout the year, any money you allocate every year to donate to your church or religious group, any charity, St. Jude, any money you plan on donating, any single dollar bill you were going to give to a homeless guy, you instead should give that money to the military-industrial complex. I want you to gather up all of the change in your couch. You go to the bank, you get a cashier's check, and you say, make it out to the military-industrial complex. Give them more money. I want them to have all the money. How about we just stop making Netflix as a company and instead give it all of the money to Lockheed Martin, Halliburton, and Smith & Wesson, you soft, half-stepping, moist-ass bitch. This is a time of war. Have we not been paying attention to China? China, by the way, has just announced that they're going to start all, you know the drills China's been running in Taiwan's motherfucking mitt ever since they let Nancy Pelosi go? And there's actually been more American politicians who've gone back because everyone just wants a war at this point. Well, China has decided, since we're already running military drills, why don't we just run these drills with the Russian army? And the Russian army's like, we are not currently at war. This would be perfect time to get strengthened and better at... I'm tired of doing a Russian accent. I'm racist against them. I've made that clear. So we have China, literally today, right now, as I live and breathe, Wednesday, August 17th, running military drills in conjunction with Russia. Now, if China and Russia were to ever team up, we would have what would be called a fair one against an enemy. Now, if Russia and China were to ever team up, and keep in mind, China and Russia about a month ago announced a new strategic partnership in which Russia thinks, hey, we have partnership, and China thinks, these dumb Russians don't even know. So they already do, okay? So imagine Russia and China teaming up. That's a formidable enemy. Now imagine Russia and China teaming up, and we're already divided. We're already engaged in a civil war. We are already a house divided. You understand where I'm going with this? Do you see the potential problem here? You can't afford to have a civil war when you're the top dog. Because the thing about, being on the list of numbers is you always want to get higher. No country wants to be the second best country. There's just a number one loser currently accepting it and plotting unbeknownst to the current number one. Hence, China and Russia, who are probably 2 and 3, who at this point have probably teamed up to create a 1A and 1B situation. Now, if we were to start dividing amongst ourselves, if we were to fall victim to, sensationalist thinking and lose faith in institutions and trust, and instead put our faith and trust in people, and people who are by definition flawed and live in sin, literally, there's books about all of this history, depending on how back you want to look. What do you think's going to fucking happen, man? Shit. But let's get back to the timeline of Trump. So, the documents that he claimed he didn't take that the FBI found were classified. And some of the classified information, we're not positive what it was, obviously, because it's fucking classified. But there are mysterious payments to Trump's family members, like Jewish Jared Kushner from Saudi Arabia, who's always trying to buy information, and they have so much money they can put an AMC movie theater there before women could drive. That's weird, But also, what's interesting to point out here, and also, 3 passports accidentally found during the FBI raid, one of them literally a fake name, so consider that. But I took the time in preparation for this show, not because I am secretly an asset of the shadow government, and I am also part alien, I would say roughly 15%. I took the time to figure out what the protocol is for classified documents to be viewed. Now, as the president, you can see pretty much, almost anything. You can see top secret shit. You can't see above top secret shit because you're not in the Majestic 12, and you're not supposed to know about that. Why are you asking questions? And now you're dead. So, the way for a president to see a certain classified document, if the level of classification is high enough, it is a necessity that this document can only be viewed in specialized government facilities under the supervision of a specialized person. So this, to be very clear, there are certain documents, and we know for a fact that the level of classification applied to some of the documents recovered in the FBI's raid at Mar-a-Lago included this level of classification, which means documents in Mar-a-Lago should not have been there. You know why? Because those specific documents don't leave specialized government research facilities. They could be underground. They could be in space, the moon, or a black site in Manila. They are certainly not at a golf course in Palm Beach, fuckface. So think about what that means logically. That means Trump got these documents at some point was at this specialized government facility, whether that be underground, the moon, or Manila. That also means that while he was viewing them, there was someone in the room. That means it was someone's job. Because like I said, there's people's entire careers based around knowing where classified shit is at all time. That's literally it. But it's almost like the Vatican archives. Like you can only look at one thing for a specific amount of time, and someone has to watch you looking at it the whole time. That's the same exact shit that is required for some of the documents found in the FBI raid, which leads me to. Doesn't that mean that the guy watching Trump read and subsequently take and leave with the highly classified document allowed him to do that? Doesn't that mean the guy whose job it is to prevent documents from leaving allowed Donald Trump to leave with them? The guy had 3 passports. I'm not saying nothing because I like being alive. I can only lead you to the water so far. I can only point out that it is really, really fucking bad when there are people willing to, at the drop of a dime, because a former reality star said something, literally anything. It's scary people are willing to show up and hurt people. It's scary those people are willing to take the time, because they don't have jobs or just general love in their life, to take all the time necessary to find out where judges who issue warrants live, to find out where their children go to school. It's scary that these guys have legally owned weapons and they'll show up and do something. It's scary that these guys are going to show up to at this point, a military compound / golf course with a former president who is maintaining, literally up until this moment in time, he is still president. That sounds awfully like something, maybe a Hitler, a Pinochet, a Genghis Khan, a Nero, maybe, any leader who has just been in charge cruelly ever has done. I can point out that people's trust in institutions is potentially at an all-time low. So much so to the point where there are examples of people detonating bombs at FBI offices because a guy told them to, and because a guy told them the FBI are a bunch of liars. That's where the distrust level is at for some people. It might not be for you, but that's where a lot of people are mentally, apparently. I could point out that, civil war is much more real than you would think, because there's literally bills just sitting around at state capitals like in Texas saying we should secede. I could point out that California has on numerous attempts proposed a plan that would have 3 new states. There's already bills and actual legislation that could help expedite this process. I could point all that out. I could point out that the first Civil War that happened here, a lot of people in the South certainly felt like, this country's headed the wrong direction, man. We are just trending the wrong way. I could also point out a lot of people on Trump's side today are saying things like, man, this country's just headed the wrong direction, man. We are headed the wrong way. Do you hear how similar those things are? And let's just hypothetically say Civil War happens. I could point that out. We have the military as it stands now. Hopefully we give them more money, but the military is spread out. So when sides form, and geographically speaking, they tend to be pretty simple, north, south, east, west. When sides split in this hypothetical Civil War, whoever gets the resources, whoever gets the guns, whoever gets the planes, whoever gets the aircraft carriers, whoever gets the heart attack guns, whoever gets the MK Ultra doctors, whoever gets anything else, pretty much luck of the draw. It's wherever you land. If you happen to live near this base, you get that. It's pretty much how that works. So do you really want to roll those dice with some of the weapons we're fucking working on? I could point all of that out. And I think I did. I think I did a pretty good job. I could point out all that shit, but I can't make any final conclusions for you. I can only make stupid jokes and offer you some actual, knowledge and news. Most of it an opinion of mine based on nothing or little more than my hunch. But I could also point out my hunch is at least 10 times out of 9 more right than yours. But the final thing I could do for you, well, actually, this thing I can't really do. I could lead you. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I can point out to you that Donald Trump had documents that can only be viewed in a specialized research facility under the supervision of a specialized research facility agent. I could point out that Jared Kushner, his Jewish son-in-law, was awarded a $2 billion investment by Saudi Arabia, a kingdom that thinks Jewish people should be exterminated. I could point out that the documents Donald Trump had that could only be viewed in a specialized research facility were allowed to leave because the specialized research facility agent said, go ahead. Now, what made that guy said, go ahead, take it? Did someone pay off that guy? Was there an organization that contacted that guy? Or was that guy just dumb enough to just make a dumb decision, to make a dumb, randomly stupid, seemingly innocuous, mundane, horseshit, fuck it decision that set in course a series of events that led to a civil war?